Yo, what's going on, guys? My name is Sore4B. Today we're going to be doing a Season 17 full settings guide. As you can see, we are in the new range here, but we are here for the settings today. So to get it right started, okay, we're going to go for all of the gameplay settings. We have compact, button hits off, crosshair damage feedback off, damage numbers stacking, ping opacity faded, obituaries on, minimap rotation on, weapon auto cycle on empty. We're actually going to turn that off. Auto sprint on. I use this personally. This is going to be personal preference for most people. Now for me, I do have a walk bind so that I can walk around without, immediately running. But then again, that is personal preference. Double tap sprint we have disabled. Jetpack control we have set to hold. This is going to be much better for mouse and keyboard players, specifically for Valkyrie. Now, incoming damage feedback I have set to 2D. This is going to be the setting that when you get shot, it will show the little red lines on your screen. Now, for taking damage closes deathbox or crafting menu, you for sure want to have this off. This setting essentially makes it to where if you are trying to get in the deathbox and swap, if you get shot, it will take you out of that deathbox, and it will most likely hinder your ability to get that swap. Hop up, pop up, we're going to keep that off. Streamer mode, this is again personal preference for you guys. The streamer mode aspect actually changes the enemy players' names. So for example, if you have this set to all, everybody in the kill feed is going to be whatever their character and then the numbers afterwards. Anonymous mode, I usually have this disabled now, or enabled due to, people see the sword tag and just hunt me down now. I've noticed so many more of that. Usage sharing we have disabled. Performance display we have on. This is going to show your FPS. Now for all of you dirty little super glide configures out there, you're going to want to keep this off so that people can't call you out, but I'll call you out still. Club invites, this is personal preference as well. If you're in a club and you don't want any invites, keep that disabled. If you want to get club invites, keep that enabled. Communication filter, this is just so what people can get text and voice messages or voice chat. Most of the time you're gonna have this on everybody so you can hear your randoms be talking to you. Now reticle, this is also going to be personal preference. As of here lately, I've been running either like a default type of red or a purple like this, or the 128 128 128 gray that I was running that I do get some questions about every so often. Now this specific crosshair is a favorite among a lot of people. But the only problem is that it gets kind of hard to see in like medium lighting areas. Now, laser sight, this is going to be personal preference as well. I generally have this on a purple or like a yellow, somewhere around there. Now, for all of these guys, these are also going to be personal preference. Colorblind mode, this used to be a relevant setting a couple seasons ago, but now in recent seasons, it hasn't been something that most people are too worried about. I keep mine on off personally. A lot of people play on Tritanopia. Or I think it's, what is it? I think it's Protanopia that other people use. But I think it's Tritanopia and Protanopia that most people use. Subtitles, this is essentially good for, this is good for one thing. Now, subtitles usually will provide you with a little bit more visual clutter. So it's not providing anything, but, it's hurting you a little bit. But it does provide a visual cue for, say you have a voice line of somebody saying that there's a third party or there's a new team. You would be able to physically see that text on screen, and from there, you can kind of decide whether or not you want to have that on or not. Subtitle size, this will change the size of the box that pops up on your screen with the subtitles. Enable accessible chat features. I usually have this off. It's more or less for, instructions on how to do things. Convert incoming voice to chat text. I always keep this off, especially if I'm getting spammed in game chat. That is extremely annoying. Play incoming text chat as speech. I also keep that off. It's the same thing. These guys are both annoying. Now, for mouse and keyboard, I am a mouse and keyboard player myself. This, again, is going to be personal preference for everyone. As of here lately, I've been playing on a 1.4 sensitivity with 800 DPI. I do use per optics. You can copy these guys down if you want. I have found that I do like these settings quite a bit. They seem relatively like a ramp of similar speed throughout, the ADS sensitivities. Now, for my actual bindings, we have, our tap strafe bind on scroll wheel forward, our jump bind on scroll wheel down, and then most of my other binds are relatively default from what I can understand, from what I can think. We have, the normal Q, Z, E, X for, attack, ultimate, interact, alternate interact, inventory being tab and I, map being M, Yeah, all of these are going to be the same for most people. Equip weapon 1, 1, 2, 3, holster weapons number 3, grenade G, that kind of stuff. Now, inspect weapon, I have in mouse button 5. This is going to be my my front mouse button on my my Starlight. It's going to be this guy, this button right here. And then for push to talk, I have it on mouse button 4. Now, for everything else, it is all going to be the exact same for most people. Now, the mouse acceleration, we want to make sure we have that off. Invert, I don't know anyone personally that uses this. I would 100% keep that off. Lighting effects, you can keep this on or off. I'm actually going to turn this off because this is specifically for, you know, related color lighting on your peripherals. But, you know, I don't use this in any aspect, so I'm going to turn that off just to see if, you know, maybe we can get some more stuff. Now, controller binds. I don't have a lot of recommendations for this. When I do play controller in the very small periods that I do, I play 5.4 classic or 5.4 linear. And then I personally play on the evolved button layout. This is, I believe, the equivalent to bumper jumper tactical in Call of Duty, if that's what you guys are looking for. Now, everything else on here, I do have a small dead zone just because when I'm playing on linear, you know, it makes it a little bit more bearable. But everything else here, I really don't have much else to speak on with it just because, you know, I don't play controller very often, but I assume most of this is going to be relatively normal. I have it on toggle crouch. You should have it on hold. It will help you in the long run. Aim button on hold, survival slot button on, and yeah. Mouse cursor speed, I usually keep a little bit over the halfway mark. It always resets though, but this is like the sweet spot that I found for myself at least. Now, the video settings. These have not changed very much over the years. Now, this, you know, this has obviously been something that a lot of people take into account because, you know, you want to be able to get better FPS. I will be able to help you with that, but it's not all going to be in this menu here, okay? So for display mode, you're always going to be playing in full screen. If you're playing in full screen bordered or full screen windowed, it's never, or even just windowed, it is never going to feel the same as it will on full screen. You're never going to use the full effect of your monitor. Now, you always want to be on full screen with aspect ratio. This is going to be personal preference. A lot of people will play 16:9, 1920 by 1080. If you want to play native resolution, but you want to get a little bit more FPS and you don't necessarily care about the resolution, you can play at 1280 by 720. That'll be the equivalent to 720p, which is still pretty solid. Now, I personally play on 1728 by 1080. This is a custom resolution that you have to create in either your NVIDIA control panel or through CRU for display scaling. I will be making a video on CRU and display scaling and why it does benefit you, but it does go a little bit more in depth, and I won't be making that video for a little bit. So if you are curious on using CRU, I'll show you the NVIDIA method, but if you do want to use CRU, there are videos out there, and I hope I remember to link one in the description for you. Now, moving on. My brightness, also not moving on with the resolution, this also is essentially the same. 1680 by 1050 is essentially the same as 1728, but 1728 gets more clarity, simply put. Okay, now moving on. Brightness, I keep this at about 60%. I like to have a little bit more contrast on my game as opposed to just flashbanging me and seeing everything. I like, you know, the colors to look relatively good. FOV, this is also going to be personal preference, right? If you're on controller, I usually recommend about 102, 104, or 106. If you're on mouse and keyboard, 108, 110, or 120. I personally play on 120, which does not reflect right here. You do have to change that in the video config files, which I can also show you how to do. I might make my own video on that though. FOV ability scaling, you want to set this to disabled. This essentially is when you're getting an Octane stim. If you hit the stim, it'll put you to 120 FOV. The game will actually change that for you. But if you have that disabled, when you hit a stim, your FOV won't increase. It'll stay the same as what your FOV slider is at. VSync, you're going to want to keep this off. Some lower end systems will require you to have like triple buffered or like adaptive, but usually you're going to want to keep this disabled. On mid to higher end systems, you're always going to want to keep it disabled. NVIDIA Reflex on the low end systems, you can do enabled plus boost. I always want to recommend though, if you have a medium to high tier system, you want to have this set to enabled, and then adaptive resolution target to 0. And then when you have this set to 0, this setting will not be enabled, so you always want to have that disabled. Anti-aliasing, this is also a personal preference, but if you have this disabled, you will get more FPS, but we can see a difference here. You know, you look at the game, you can kind of see some of the edges are a little bit rough. If we turn anti-aliasing on, the edges smooth out. Looks a little bit better. But again, that is personal preference. You know, moving on, the texture streaming budget, this is also personal preference, but this is the only setting that actually matters in the video settings. Now, I have mine set to very low just because I do, you know, put a lot of stress on my graphics card when I'm either recording, streaming, or both. But for a lot of people, if you're just playing the game and you have a decent system, you can crank this up to high, very high, or even insane. It will make the game look better. The overall skins and quality will look better. But as you can see, you know, going back down to low, it doesn't change that much. It's not super noticeable, but you will get FPS out of it. Now, everything else in this video settings window is all going to be set to the lowest setting possible, aside from spot shadow detail. You're going to want to keep this set to low. I forget the science behind it, but I believe there is a bug in the game right now where if you have your spot shadow detail set to disabled, it can bug your game, or there's some type of visual bug where it messes something up and it's not good. So you want to keep that to low. I don't remember why, but I did have to change that setting to low and it fixed whatever issue I was having. Volumetric lighting, everything here, it's all disabled or on the lowest setting possible. You're 100% going to want to keep that on there. Now, audio, this is not going to be the same for anyone, okay? This genuinely depends on how much your headset can handle, what audio setup you have. It all varies. Now, when I'm playing the actual game, I'm always hovering around the 60 to 65% mark in audio. If I put it up to 100, I'm literally blowing my eardrums out, but that will not be the case for a lot of people. Now, because I have a Go XLR in my audio setup, that is why, you know, I have to set my settings a little bit lower. I have 250 ohm headphones, and the Go XLR will allow all 250 ohms of that, and you know, when it's using all of that, the volume is just crazy. So I have mine set to 60% personally. My lobby music and my lobby music volume, or my music volume and lobby music volume, are always super low, but not all the way down. I do like to hear it sometimes. But for the most part, this is, you know, kind of where you want it to be relatively, but this is going to be, you know, dependent on your entire setup essentially. Now that we're at the desktop, if you have an NVIDIA graphics card, this part is going to be for you. You're going to want to right click on your desktop. I'm specifically on Windows 11, so this might look a little bit different for you. If you're on Windows 10, you're going to want to click NVIDIA control panel. It's going to be somewhere in the middle here. Otherwise, you're going to click show more options and go to NVIDIA control panel. What I'm going to be showing you right now is how to set up the 1728 resolution, right? So this is strictly through NVIDIA control panel. Like I said, if you want to use CRU, there are videos out there for it. But what you're going to want to do is you want to go to change resolution. You want to go to customize. And then you're going to want to create custom resolution. Type 1728 by 1080. Refresh rate, whatever your monitor's refresh rate should be. And then you press test. And then this is going to say duplicate resolution because I already have this. But normally this, you know, this will flicker your monitor, and then you'll want to say keep or okay, whatever it'll prompt you with afterwards. And then you should see a 1728 by 1080 resolution here at whatever refresh rate your monitor is. And then if your game is open at that point, you'll want to restart it. And then once you open it, you can change it to 1610 and then 1728 by 1080. Now, the second half of the graphics aspect of this is going to be in your 3D settings here. Now, there are a lot of settings that you'll want to have for Apex specifically. And from, you know, in my years of experience of trying to optimize my games and my computer specifically to play this game, these are the best settings that I have personally found and are working very well in Season 17. Now, a lot of these are going to be the use global setting, and the actual parentheses are what matter here, okay? So for image scaling, you know, you're usually going to want to keep this off. I haven't had this in a long time, so I have to reset that setting. But anisotropic filtering, we're going to want application controlled, FXAA off, gamma correction on, anti-aliasing mode, application controlled, and then transparency off, background application, max frame rate off, CUDA GPUs all. Low latency mode, you'll actually want this set to ultra. And then for max frame rate, you can keep that off. Monitor technology, you'll want G-Sync compatible. This will flicker here for a second. And then multi-frame sampled AA off, OpenGL GDI compatibility, auto, OpenGL rendering GPU, auto select, which will be whatever graphics card you have in your computer at the time. Power management mode. Now this one does matter. There we go. Power management mode does matter. You're going to want this set to prefer maximum performance. This is going to be the setting that gets the most juice out of your graphics card to throw at Apex. Now, for these settings here for texture filtering, the only one you're going to really care about here is setting the quality of texture filtering to high performance. This will gain FPS. That setting alone has made my game feel significantly better. Now, these settings, aside from vertical sync, you're going to 100% want that off. You know, we never want that. But everything else here should be A-okay for most people. I have a pretty medium to high-end system, so this works specifically well for me, but for a lot of people, this can be situational. But these settings, you know, from all the people that I have, you know, shown these settings and given them to, they've all said, you know, it works great. We'll go down here, hit apply, and then you'll want to restart your game, open that up again, and you should feel a difference there. All right, now for the second half of this video, we are going to want to go to your Windows key over here, typed in saved games. I gotta bring this guy over here. And what we're gonna want to do is we're gonna want to go to respawn Apex profile, profile.cfg, and then I'm actually going to put these guys in the description. I will set, or I'll have 3 links for my profile.cfg, my video config, and my settings. If you guys want to copy them, you can. I'll actually have my auto exec in there as well, which is Hollow's auto exec. If you have that already, then you're good to go. If you don't, I'll leave a link to that, and that will also give you a pretty good amount of FPS. But this profile here is just going to be mostly game settings. The most important setting here is that in my profile.cfg, I have CL FOV scale set to 1.7. If you do not want to play 120 FOV, you have to change this to 1.55. That is the standard 110 FOV scale. So, you know, just make sure if you want to be 120, you can have that. If not, you know, don't worry about it. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to close out of this guy. We're going to go to Apex local. And then as you can see, I have a folder here of prior configs in the past, or like files for this specific folder. My video config though is recent. So we're going to go to this guy. Now, the stuff that matters in this is that your default res, which will be the resolution that your game starts in, can change based on, you know, if you're adding the resolution that I just showed you guys, you're going to want to change your default res to the 1728 so that this launches in that resolution every time you launch the game. Now, the important settings to take away from this are, I believe, the setting full screen 1. Some people will have this set to 0. It all kind of depends on what stretch res you're on. If you're on a non like divisible by 16 or 9, whatever it is, resolution, and I believe you have to have that set to 0, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But for if you're using the 1728 resolution, you'll want to have that set to 1. You should be good to go in that. Now, the settings.cfg is the only other important one in here that we want to make sure we know about. Now, this is where my binds are going to be. Now, if you want to have my binds, feel free. You know, you're A-okay. You can copy these guys, or, you know, you can download the file, replace it. That's fine by me. But I want you guys to know, having my settings doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make you a better player. You know, it's all a matter of what time you put into the game. Now, the key takeaways with this guy is these binds here, as well as the auto exec bind. So these binds here, we have F3, F4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 through 12. And these are all going to be FPS commands. Now, this is included in Hollow's auto exec, and it's personally something that I found very, very cool, because it's not, I'm pretty much change my frame rate in the matter of hitting a button, to the point where, you know, if I'm, you know, streaming and the area of map that I'm in is just not doing it for me and I'm not getting a good frame rate, I can then drop my capped frame rate down so that it feels consistent during that point. Now, most of the time when I'm playing, I usually hit F8. F8 is also my it's also my bind to save my clips, so a lot of the times it'll end up defaulting back to this. But these are the main two that I use. I either play on 180 or 240 FPS. I don't like playing on 300 just due to inconsistency, and then it throws my super glides off because it's inconsistent. I just don't like doing that. So these are the main two that I use. If you don't want the F6, F5, 4, 3, 2, that kind of stuff, you don't necessarily have to do that. But these guys are, again, all going to be from Hollow's config, or auto exec, sorry. And then, the rest of it, we have our shift bind. That is my walk bind that I was talking about earlier. But other than that, everything else here is relatively normal. It'll show your name here. But yeah, I'll leave these guys in the description if you want to grab that. They're in the saved games folder, and then you just replace these guys here. All right, that about wraps it up for today's video. I will have a couple more videos coming on season 17 content here soon, especially talking about this range here and everything that's new in this with you know, the 1v1 spots and the movement course and that kind of stuff. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys for stopping by today, and I'll see you guys all later. Peace out.